Newsmax TV coverage of Battleground Florida continues live from the Versailles restaurant in Miami, Florida. J.D. Hayworth alongside John Bogman. And we continue to visit with guests here in Little Havana, including a very familiar face on Newsmax TV. Political activist Raul is here joining us. And alongside, staying with us very graciously, Carlos Perez, one-time Reagan advisor. Carlos had something very interesting to say during the break that I want to get to. But Raul, since you're the new guy on deck, sure. Thanks for having us down, and you often visit us on the anchor desk, but it's good to be here on your turf.
Thank you for coming to Miami. We're glad you're here. Come down more often.
Well, we're making a 3-hour investment this morning, and we hope to come back again and again. And as the attorneys would say, there's a preponderance of physical evidence to indicate that I enjoy the cooking here at the Versailles.
Good. We'll get
now,
you some pastelitos, some Cuban coffee.
Beautiful. Now, here's what I need to know. What's cooking politically? Can Rubio pull a miracle? What are you expecting?
You know what? I think it'd be a really, really tough hill to climb, quite frankly. I was at the debate Thursday night, and I think Marco Rubio had a terrific performance. But the polls that I've seen indicate that Trump has sort of a double-digit lead, and I just don't see him overcoming that anytime soon. Marco's extremely popular here in South Florida. And in fact, he was very much playing that up at the debate itself. I think he's sort of acknowledging the fact that it's going to be very tough for him to get that I-4 corridor in Central Florida and the Panhandle. I think a lot of those folks have probably already voted. My guess is they've already voted for Trump. And I think it's going to be tough for Marco. It's going to be really tough.
Which brings us to a great small businessman, Carlos Perez. And Carlos, during the break, you had your own take on this, and it is spelled Trump, correct?
Yeah. We are witnessing one of the most strange elections in the history of the country. There are many factors involved in this situation, so many forces. People are sick and tired of government, of politicians, and those new forces, plus the fact that there is a feeling that the prestige of the American government has been, eroding, it's being eroded. Those create a situation where you have a candidate like Trump that channelize all of those secret forces, and that is the difficult. How difficult it is to analyze this particular situation. I am a conservative. However, the older conservative, we are losing the punch to reach the people. There is a new concept of conservatism that is integrated into the mentality of the American people. That's the situation with Trump. Concerning Marco Rubio, in my humble opinion, Marco Rubio is the best exposure of ideas since Ronald Reagan. The guy has fantastic ability to expose ideas. Ted Cruz, the most intelligent, completely the most intelligent. The guy is so brilliant. However, my candidate, what I was supposed that to be the best candidate was Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush was the integrity, from an integral point of view. He had the gravitas and the best candidate to be president. And you see that the whole thing comes up and the Trump phenomenon appears. Excuse me,
yes,
I don't want to be
that's okay.
I don't think that it's going to be very difficult that Donald Trump lose the election, as Raul says.
Yeah. Well, let me talk to you about his business bona fides, your background of small business success. To have a billionaire running for the presidency, it seems to bring him a certain confidence and a certain credibility with the voting public.
Because people want people to win, So far, the social program has developed into something unbelievable, and the whole thing, the situation, international, the prestige of the American government is, down and down and down. And people need some kind of a winning personality. And those factors, together with the background of Donald Trump, makes the guy,
When you listen to Donald Trump's language and you hear this over and over again on the stump, it is, we are going to do this together. Of course, his slogan is, let's make America great again. But everything he says on the stump is, we are going to be great. We are going to win. And it's the frustration, specifically in the heartland of America, where people have not been able to recover from the recession of 2008, that is what he is tapping into. And that's why it's so visceral for people. It's so
we
real.
have a situation with Trump of degrees. What I say degrees is he explained, and he's a demagogue up to certain degree. He's a demagogue, but he says part true of situations. So you have to place in a balance the forces that are beneath this election and what Trump says.
Sure.
It's a matter of degrees, and that's the.
Well, I just have to ask Raul. When people hear demagogue, Carlos, that's a pejorative. People, well, wait a minute. But and I know you don't mean it that way. Is it really more that Trump is a marketing genius? He understands how to express his message.
Look, I mean, I think obviously the guy has tremendous sort of television presence and experience. The reality shows that he's done. I mean, he obviously knows how to use the press to his benefit. He looks very well on television. He appeals to the crowd. But I think what you alluded to earlier in terms of tapping into that sort of economic uncertainty that so many Americans are feeling, and I think, quite frankly, that economic uncertainty started way before 2008. And I've said it over and over again that I think one of the most brilliant individuals in this whole political debate was that gentleman with the big ears named Ross Perot, who back in 1992 said that tremendous sucking sound that you're going to hear after we sign all those free trade agreements is going to be all the jobs going to China and all the jobs going to Mexico. And people
Raul, you were at the debate on Thursday.
Yeah, sure.
Were you surprised at how much that the issue of trade came up?
You know what? I think it's an important issue.
Critically important. It's also coming up during the Democratic debate too.
Of course,
and
of course.
That tells you, a lot of America doesn't understand necessarily what are in these trade agreements, even the TPP, as much as that's been talked about.
Right.
But they're feeling the effect of that.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that blue collar, and I think one of the things that the Democrats are emphasizing is the fact that the middle class in this country has shrunk. Okay. And a lot of these folks that grew up in small factory towns working at the same factory that their father worked at, that their grandfather worked at, they were making good wages. They were actually union members. Okay, they were a welder or an assemblyman or a mechanic or whatever. Those jobs have disappeared from America, and there's been nothing to replace it. We talk about the technological revolution and the new businesses and stuff. But guess what? It isn't that easy to take a textile worker and turn them into a software engineer overnight. Yep. And that's what's happened in this country. It's a whole industrial revolution.
That's the thing about Trump. Rating is power. He understands that. And to be the news, he makes the news constantly.
Yep.
So those two factors, rating is power and be on the hit parade, let's put it that way. And he's a genius at that.
Well, you have been a success in small business. I think a lot of folks would say a genius. So Carlos, I want to ask you, we heard Raul really chronicle what has changed in America. All the promises of free trade seeming to rust, not only in the Rust Belt, but in the Sun Belt with textiles and other things. Is Trump espousing the right kind of policy in terms of trade?
In some kind, as I was telling you, Trump is a matter of degrees. Up to some degrees, he's right in what he says. Up to a little bit degree, he's not right. So you have to understand when they say demagogue or this and that. You have to understand the situation of degrees. Let me give you an example. United States needs to bring all the workers that are working in other countries back to the United States. That's part of true. But that's part of true. It's not 100% true. It's part of true. And those are the subjects that you have to analyze when Trump talks.
Less than 3 minutes remaining in this segment. Raul, people talk about Donald Trump. We make a big deal of the reality television star part of his resume. But he's a billionaire who was educated at the Wharton School of Business. He is no dummy. Indeed, what was it yesterday? Dr. Carson in his endorsement talked about the two faces of Donald. The private Donald, the thoughtful, the pensive Donald.
Right.
Do you think that thoughtful business leader part of his personality will win out if this presidential campaign continues to go the way
I
it
think
is?
you're already starting to see the metamorphosis. I mean, Thursday night, I think he was already acting more presidential. He was acting more sort of above the fray, but still with that same degree of confidence, which I think has taken him to where he is today. I mean, he did not shy away at all when he was asked that question about, are you going to take on the world's 1.6 billion Muslims? And he was like, well, listen, I don't know how many there are, but there are an awful lot of them that hate us, So he's still being very honest, very candid, but I think he's beginning to act as well he should. I mean, he's the front runner, right? So he's beginning to act more presidential, more as if, I'm the guy who's going to be, leading the Republican Party in a few weeks.
Only a minute remains. I'll let you go ahead and finish.
If you look back 2 weeks ago, even who would have anticipated that Ben Carson would get behind Donald Trump? And he continues to surprise on fronts like that.
Well, let me just ask this question in closing: if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, Carlos, are you going to support him?
Most definite. I say in my radio show, we have two factors here. A simple situation. Regardless of the problems within the Republican conservative parties, there is a general election, Democrats and Republicans. I will back whoever is selected by the Republican Party. Because what we cannot allow in this country is to elect a Democratic Party at this moment that this country needs a complete change of the whole situation. We have to change the policies created by Barack Obama in the last 7 years.
Carlos Perez, noted radio host, small businessman extraordinaire, and advisor to Ronald Reagan. We thank you for some advice. Raul, Mas, always great to see you. Again, it's great to be away from the anchor desk, and we want you to hang in with us to talk about a few other topics.
Absolutely. By the way, I share his viewpoint 110%.
Well, that's good. As
Fall
we
into the
say,
ranks.
very